Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Amir Al-Kayed. I am the chairperson of the Global Refugee-led Network. And this side event is going to be one of the most important side events, in my opinion, meaningful refugee participation. Just a couple of logistical notes. We're going to have like 90 minutes, like all the other side events. 2 panels, very strong panelists. And also we have interpretation. It's going to be English, Spanish, and French. So if you need interpretation, I think you all have your headphones for you to use. The main objective of this event is to demonstrate the benefits of including refugees as active participants in decision-making processes and responses to forced displacement. Without any delay, I would like to invite the Assistant High Commissioner for Protection, Ms. Gillian Triggs, to give her opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Ahmed. And yes, this is the event we've all been waiting for. This is so different from what we did 4 years ago. And I think it's really the benchmark of what we've and you have achieved over these last 4 years. It was participation of refugees and stateless people in this event, the partnership that has become such a crucial element of the work that we're all doing. We know, and it's now well understood, that we cannot proceed with advocacy on the rights of refugees and stateless people unless we listen to their voices and listen loud and clear. We just had a session a couple of hours ago where we heard the voices of children, where I understand they got a standing ovation. So well done. But now we'll hear, I think, the voices of refugees. The title of this event then is The Meaningful Refugee Participation and How Partnerships with Forcibly Displaced and Stateless People improve policies and solutions. What are the outcomes? And I think there are 2 really critical words here, is refugees and participation and meaningful. We believe at UNHCR that including refugees as part of the participation and part of policy and decision making is not only a moral imperative, but it's a smart thing to do. People who've been displaced are obviously the first ones there. They know what's happening in a crisis. They know why they're being forced to move, and they know better than anybody what they most need. I've always been very interested in going to refugee camps, sometimes even urban areas, but mainly camps, particularly in the last year or so, when you ask group after group, what is it that UNHCR can do? What do they most want from us? And the answer is almost invariably food. They haven't enough food. It's as basic as that. It's not a sophisticated issue at all, but with the decline in the global economy, the decline in funding, the World Food Programme, a decline in funding, of course, for UNHCR has a huge impact, but we need to hear that voice loud and clear. UNHCR is committed to engaging with communities, and we're now working much more meaningfully, I believe, with communities at the local level. Within the context of the global, the grand bargain, we now get about 25% of our funding to local groups, local communities. It's not perfect yet, we're not all the way there, but I think we are now working much more effectively at local levels and working with refugee and refugee-led groups. We would like to emphasize, of course, that we're here to talk about the Global Refugee Forum and the compact on which it's based. And the compact has particularly called for the meaningful participation of displaced and stateless people in the development and implementation of pledges towards the GCR objectives, taking into account age, gender, and other forms of diversity. That's the perspective that we take when we think about inclusion. But listening to refugee voices and their inclusion in the work that we do has to be meaningful. And I think we've come a long way. There was a time a few years ago, or even the last 2 or 3 years, where to have a refugee on a panel was enough. Well, it was a start. But from where we were 4 years ago to where we are now, it's an extraordinary transformation. I think 4 years ago, we had about 70 refugees part of the first Global Refugee Forum. And now we have 300 refugees here at this second Global Refugee Forum. We also have about 22 delegations that have included refugees in their delegations and given them speaking roles and worked with them to evolve policies and decisions. Well, there's some things that we've been able to do at the UN Refugee Agency. We've established an interdivisional task team to work with organizations led by displaced people. And we've established the first global advisory board just last year of organizations led by displaced and stateless people to advise us, and the High Commissioner, of course, on meaningful participation. We have a joint refugee statement which was given during the opening ceremony, and they've been involved in the development of our global policies and strategies. Our localization agenda has been increasingly effective, with countries in Latin America developing their local strategies and operations in Malaysia and Bulgaria establishing their own advisory boards that include forcibly displaced and stateless people. I did want to mention in particular the work that's been done with regard to people who are stateless. You may all be aware of the very ambitious initiative that we have, the I Belong campaign, to end statelessness by the end of next year. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to succeed by the end of next year, but I think we've made some progress in giving greater visibility to the otherwise often invisible problem of statelessness, the phenomenon of statelessness that's so damaging. But also, we have a plan B, if you like, or the next phase. And that is that after the end of next year, we will have a global alliance really expanding the engagement in dealing with refugees and stateless people. And we hope that you can all be involved in that process. So can I conclude by saying I think we've all come a very long way. It's wonderful to see so many of you here who represent or are refugees. It's really making a difference, but we need to continue to work together on how to make that engagement meaningful. Thank you very much.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Lorena Boy, and I have the distinct pleasure to ask this fantastic panel some questions about meaningful refugee participation. So without further ado, let's get started. So over to my right, I will be asking Ms. Fiona Whiteridge, who is the General Manager of Refugee and Migrant Support for New Zealand. Greetings.
Kia ora.
All right. So can you please share with us, what are the benefits of engaging refugee advisors in policy, programming, pledge development, and national delegations?
Thank you, Lorena, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm extremely honoured to be here and to be talking to you all at this historic time for the international community to discuss the benefits of meaningful refugee participation for states based on the experience of New Zealand. And we're hugely grateful for the invitation and the opportunity to talk about the work that we have been doing in New Zealand. In 2022, we formally committed to sustainable and meaningful engagement with former refugee communities in New Zealand. To us, it was paramount that this engagement was genuine, inclusive, and purposeful, enabling of community perspectives and expertise to inform the development of policy recommendations, strategies and programming and other initiatives that affect refugees. A refugee advisory panel was established in 2022 to support government decision makers and policy developers to deliver better outcomes for refugees and provide New Zealand's refugee community with the ability to have a voice on matters that directly affect them via its current and future members. These people have a wide range of expertise and vary from those who have recently arrived to those who have been living in New Zealand for more than 20 years. And there's a few of them here today and at the forum, which is fantastic. We believe that meaningful refugee participation occurs when refugees are valued partners throughout the development of policy, strategies, and initiatives. It is common practice for states to utilise subject matter experts, and in this context, our refugee communities hold an unparalleled level of knowledge and experience that is absolutely critical to be considered from design to implementation. We partnered with RSEAT, and I can see Rez and many of the RSEAT people here today, and the Centre for Asia Pacific Research Studies at Auckland University. And that partnership was critical to establish and continue to grow the capability of the New Zealand Refugee Advisory Panel. And that Centre for Asia Pacific Research Study at the University of Auckland role was to provide capability building, leadership, development and research that empowers the panel members to step forward and have a genuine seat at the table. This will help ensure that panel members have the tools they need to participate meaningfully and succeed. Engaging with refugee advisors and people with lived experience of forced displacement in the development and implementation of refugee and settlement policy, settlement initiatives and funding bids contributes to solutions that are evidence-based, innovative, and much more sustainable. Partnering with these former refugees develop national programs is a beneficial way to operationalise policy decisions and programs in a way that makes the most impact for refugee communities. A recent example of this was following policy changes to New Zealand's refugee family support category. We partnered with former refugees to co-design a streamlined customer journey through the immigration system that would increase the level of communication and reduce stresses for families throughout the application process. That co-design process also identified future areas of policy work and provided greater insight into the challenges that could improve the way this category worked for former refugees.
Thank you. And before I go to the next question for you, I just want to share some gratitude. I want to say thank you for, this refugee advisory panel and for including refugees, because, oftentimes we as former refugees, we fight for these chances and experiences, but, we also want to share that gratitude that, when you do recognize the fact that we should be included in some of these decision-making and policies as well. So what is your vision for a meaningful refugee participation in New Zealand in the future?
Thank you. Maybe I can give an example of the development of our pledges here for the Global Refugee Forum. So in order to build our pledges, we did those in a way that worked right from the beginning of the development of those pledges with our current refugee advisor in the New Zealand RAP, Paula Santa Cruz, who's sitting here today. And they helped us develop out what was important for refugees in New Zealand, what was important for the New Zealand government, and then constructively we worked together to build the series of pledges that New Zealand was able to bring to the Global Refugee Forum. So having Paula here and people like her enrich our experience and our ability to be able to engage and understand and work with the communities that we are looking to work with. So I'm just conscious of time. So I think what I'd like to conclude by saying is that our overall approach to our Global Refugee Forum pledges, they reflect a comprehensive approach to meaningful refugee participation and supporting and enabling refugees to use their significant and phenomenal expertise.
Fantastic. I told you I'm proud to be sitting amongst you all here. Now, I am going to transition over to Mr. Tolga Uncle, who is the retail manager for Inca Group, also connected with IKEA. So, Mr. Tolga, IKEA has been hiring refugees for many years. So why would you say refugee participation is important for IKEA's retail business? And how does their engagement generate better business outcomes?
Thank you so much, and being very humbled sitting here in front of all of you and sharing what we do, which I believe is not enough, but at least we're trying. So to start with, IKEA has a very clear vision. The vision is to create a better everyday life for the many people. And this vision is not only by furnishing their homes, but goes beyond what we are doing. And as an organization, we are also owned by a foundation. So all our profit goes to the foundation, which can only do two things with the money: either reinvest into IKEA or donate to our foundation. And this gives us both the opportunity, but also the responsibility to think long term and to see how can we create a big impact in the society. We believe in integration of refugees is good for our business, good for business in general, but also good for societies. And now we have come to a point where we actually have proof points. We started 2015 with the belief, and today we sit with data and facts that is actually proving that this is the right thing to do. For us, the business case is super clear, and we know it's good business to do good business. And we are in the hunt to be a diverse and equal as much as we can. And when it comes to when you start in IKEA as a refugee or through one of our programs, you are of course a refugee until the moment if you choose to actually sign a contract with IKEA. And this is very important for us. That is the moment where it actually stops being a refugee, and you become a co-worker just like myself, part of the big IKEA family. We have also proof points. Studies are very clear, and data and research are showing us that 64% of people prefer to buy from brands which are purpose-driven and has a very trustworthy reputation. We also know that when hiring a diverse coworker base, you have 30% higher level of creativity and innovation, and all companies needs to have a higher level of innovation. And the big proof point is the retention rate. The refugees that joined IKEA through the Skills for Employment program has a 90% retention rate compared to many other of our coworkers where that number is a bit lower. So just to say three things that we are doing. One is the Skills for Employment program, where we actually give the opportunities for people to learn language, get some experience, and increase their employability. Hopefully they get employed by IKEA, but if they choose somewhere else, we are equally happy for them and the opportunities this will give to them. And then what we're also doing is spending a lot of our effort to change the narrative. In many markets and countries where we operate, there is a narrative connected to refugees and that is not true. And we are doing our utmost to actually utilize the channels we have, and being in all the countries where we are, from Seattle all the way to Sydney and soon in New Zealand as well. This gives us an opportunity to actually participate and engage other businesses. So in the last years, we have engaged with over 700 other companies to actually be a voice to change the narrative of refugees. So it is very clear, it is good business to do good business. That's what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolga. I like that. It's good business to do good business, right? Absolutely. I'm gonna take that home with me. All right, so now, next person here, we are going to be hearing from Ms. Fatih Nazhassin. She is the director, the Africa director for Oxfam International. So, Ms. Fatih, Oxfam has championed the participation of refugees in its own work and supported others to do the same. How does the inclusion of refugees guide policy and/or program development and improve implementation outcomes on the ground?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, all. It's a very pleasure and an honor to address you today on a subject that is really important for Oxfam in everything we do. The very notion of meaningful participation must start with the recognition that refugees and host communities are not passive recipients of aid, but agents of change. Most of the time, they are direct and first responders to emergencies and later rehabilitation, integration, and development efforts. The acknowledgement of the active agency of refugees and communities hosting them is something that Oxfam puts at the heart of our work. And through doing so, it becomes only natural that as humanitarians, we must be open to learning from refugees and host communities in all their diversity. Everything we do must involve the active and meaningful participation of refugee women, men, youth, and the communities hosting them. By now, we are all aware that simply attending, observing, and speaking in decision-making spaces does not guarantee that refugees and host community representatives can participate or engage meaningfully in local, national, or even international spaces. And this is a crucial point, that such engagement is meaningful. The multi-stakeholder pledge on meaningful refugee participation, which Oxfam is proud to lead, and which has over 100 signatories, sets out the importance of such ongoing and sustained engagement. And in Oxfam's experience, built over decades of work in humanitarian context across the world, effective participation and representation require systematic, consistent, and equal participation that provide time to allow inclusive social dialogues to take place and to produce institutional commitments that can transform decision-making systems and dynamics. We have seen many good examples of this work and how it can improve outcome on the ground. In Uganda, for instance, Oxfam has played a brokering role in connecting refugee-led organizations to spaces and networks, supporting several refugee leaders and refugee-led organizations to participate in regional and international events. This has included support for the engagement of refugees in decision-making through Refugee Engagement Forum established in 2018, alongside the Office of the Prime Minister and UNHCR. Oxfam provides both technical and financial support for participation and works with members to ensure that they are equipped with the necessary tools and skills to actively participate and contribute to discussions. The result has been better defined policies that effectively respond to the needs of the affected people. And the Refugee Engagement Forum has played a key role when it comes to defining pledges and priorities in the lead up to this forum. In Turkey, meanwhile, Oxfam has been supporting refugee-led organizations, bringing them together with national organizations to promote solidarity and collaboration.
And Ms. Fati, thank you so much for sharing these amazing examples. One of the things that you said in regards to refugees being agents of change, I think that is extremely strong and it really sticks out. And if you don't leave here with anything today, I really want you to take that in mind. We are agents of change. So thank you so much for your intervention. And I'm going to now shift over to our final panelist, who is with us from, forget me here. All right. So now I will be posing a question to, where's my number 4? All right, Ms. Sheila de Carvalho, who is the president of CONER, the National Committee of Refugees from Brazil. So, Ms. Sheila, what are the benefits of including forcibly displaced and stateless persons and their organizations in policy development within Brazil's unified migration policy?
Thank you, Lorena. I want to salute everyone here in the audience in the person of Majo Mano, a great, incredible woman, a stateless woman that now has Brazilian nationality and is part of our Brazilian delegation for this forum. And I want to thank you, UNHCR, for the invite to be here today to share something that is a great matter for me. As you can see, I am a Black woman in Brazil. And in Brazil, the most significant demographic group is Black women. We are 27% of all the Brazilian population. And why I'm saying that? Because as a Black woman, I most of the time in my life and in my mother's life and my grandmother's life, they are left out of the building of public policy. We are the most significant group in Brazil, but we are not part in the place of powers and decision making. And this has always been a concern to me. This year is very important for us that work in the agenda in refugee in Brazil. This year, the National Committee for Refugees is celebrating 25 years. And for the 25 years in Brazil, a Black country, is the first time that we have a Black president. And I think this is a reflect that the times are changed and how we lead the national police. Refugees and migrants, they didn't have the opportunity to participate when our legislation was built. When we're talking about refugees, our legislation is from 1997 and didn't have the participation of refugees, and we didn't have the possibility that refugees integrate the National Committee for Refugees in by our legislation. And we want this to change. Now we are creating mechanisms to possibilitate the participation of the people who will be affected for our politics to be part of the process of building this politics. I think this is very important and think this is something that we want to create and establish for all we are building in Brazil relate not only this agenda, but agenda who affects people, different kind of people. Today, we are building the national policy for refugees, migrants, and stateless people, and people who need international protection in general. And I'm very glad to inform that we took the participation of groups led by refugees to create this policy. So we divide a lot of work groups for a lot of months, and we were able to increase the participation and themes that is especially the interest of the people that are refugees and migrants in our country, especially when you're talking about social inclusion, work opportunities, how to have better access to health, education, and other challenges that this population live in your country. We expect that this policy will be published next year, and we bring to this forum, I think forum is an opportunity to see the past and to think the future. And in this moment, and this forum global, we are bringing a pledge related to meaningful participation that we have 2 points. One that we are working to guarantee that migrants and refugees and stateless other people and necessity of international protection have access to all the process to the national policy related to them. And the other one that we will be able to include it representation of refugees in your national communities for refugees. I think this is something that all of us again, not only the refugees, the people who need international protections, but I think we want as a state that we can make by this participation a better policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gilla. I think it's extremely important to have refugees participate from the beginning of policy formation. That's really important because that's where the true work is, not brought in later when, you know, the groundwork has been laid. So thank you for sharing that pledge. Well, thank you so much to this amazing, fantastic panel. And to our audience, I'm sure you can agree with me that it has been great to hear all of these interventions. Some of the things that really stuck out to me, and I hope that you will remember it, is it's always good to do good business, and refugees are agents of change. So I hope that all of the interventions that you heard today, you will take those interventions along with you to your within your prospective areas of work. And I hope that you will also be a champion for meaningful refugee participation. So with that being said, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine, and thank you all for all the participants for a rich contribution on meaningful refugee participation. Now, I would like to invite the second panelist to the stage, please.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to engage in this very important event. Let me just start with a few very simple remarks. I'm Xavier de Victor, by the way, I'm with the World Bank. The first remark is that everything that we discussed over the last 2 days, that we're going to discuss tomorrow, requires us to make different policies and different programs. And if we want to make different policies and different programs, we need to make programs differently and policies differently. And that's about voice. That's about strengthening voices that are currently underrepresented in the debate. A few years ago, I was talking to a government official in a Central European country. And this person told me, you see, in international debates, you can either be at the table or on the menu. We want to be at the table. Well, for far too long, refugees have been on the menu. I think it is high time that they are also at the table. And as Gillian said, this is not only the right thing to do, this is also the smart thing to do. So today we have a group of very inspirational refugee leaders on this panel. And without further ado, I would like to give them the floor, starting with Henny Al-Rustum, who is program manager at Resourcing Refugee Leadership Initiative, which among other things is a significant funding mechanism for refugee-led organizations in many countries. So Hani, maybe can you tell us about the challenges of funding and what are effective approaches to increase funding to refugee-led organizations?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Hani. Before I start, I would like to ask those who would like to participate, the refugees in the room, to stand up, please, just to be visible and seen for a minute. Yeah. It's remarkable, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. It's remarkable to see a lot of us here and also to be seen in such spaces. Also, I would like to acknowledge those who could not make it because of different reasons, such as visas, bureaucracy, and also those who are facing huge atrocities in Palestine in these moments. So, as the Resourcing Refugee Leadership Initiative, I would like maybe to tell you more about it. We are 6 refugee-led organizations. We came together a few years ago to think about our challenges as refugee-led organizations because we struggle. We struggle a lot in accessing funding and accessing spaces where we can secure funding for our programs that serve our communities, and together we created solutions for the lack of funding. And one of our the biggest focus of our work was to center funding or resourcing funding for refugee-led organizations, because we believe that meaningful participation can never happen without funding for refugee-led organizations themselves. And also we believe that we have the right to access funding equal as other organizations in the sector. In the past few years, we launched our 2 years. We launched our grant making module, which is the RLO to RLO fund. And what is special about it, and it was also one of our challenges before, that it is designed and run by refugees for refugees. And refugee-led organizations. In the past 2 years, we could grant $7.2 million for refugee-led organizations. We reached around 800,000 community members, and we worked with around 69 refugee-led organizations. We face a lot the question of the strengthening and how we lack the ability to process money and to access, like to be able to process money in general. And we believe that this is not true. We have skills, we have capacities, and we have the knowledge of the context in our countries. And this is why we also launched our strengthening program. And the strengthening program we have is based on a community of practice module where we equally work together with our partners, our refugee-led organization partners, to share information, share knowledge, and together work on strengthening each other's capacity in working in this sector. I would say maybe at last our biggest challenge was the exclusion that we have been facing over the past years from decision-making spaces like this space, for example, and not being able to tell our stories, claim our rights of deciding how we want to use the money and where to use the money, and also to claim our role in deciding how to distribute resources in the sector, which we all know how much resources has been committed every year for the crisis of refugees around the world. Thank you.
Many, many thanks. Let me now turn to Daniela Maya Perez Obondo, who is the Latin American lead in RCIT. And so, Daniela, could you maybe tell us about RCIT's approach in advancing advocacy for increased refugee participation, and how this has led to better policy outcomes and improved global responses to forced displacement?
Thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to invite you to use your headphone for translation, because my colleague Santiago and me, we are going to provide it in Spanish. Me siento muy privilegiada de estar aquí en representación de Refugee Seeking Equal Access at the Table, RCIT, una organización liderada por personas refugiadas para mejorar la efectividad de las respuestas globales a los retos enfrentados por las personas refugiadas, mediante el diseño conjunto de mecanismos de participación que están guiados a expandir el liderazgo de estas personas refugiadas a nivel local y también a nivel internacional. En este tiempo, notablemente diferente desde el primer Foro Mundial de Personas Refugiadas, es imperativo que empecemos a considerar a las personas refugiadas, como bien lo comentaban en el anterior panel, como agentes de cambio, y en este caso, como aliados. Aliados precisamente para desarrollar políticas y estrategias que estén guiadas a cubrir sus necesidades y también las necesidades de las mismas personas de las comunidades de acogida. El mandato de ARCID es colaborar con los estados, refugiados expertos, organizaciones lideradas por personas refugiadas y también la academia para desarrollar mecanismos participativos de manera continua, de manera estructurada, transparente y sustantiva. ¿De qué forma? Pueden tener la forma de precisamente consejos consultivos de personas refugiadas, paneles consultivos de personas refugiadas. Y precisamente nos alegra muchísimo que este mismo modelo ya haya sido adoptado por países como lo son Canadá, Nueva Zelanda, Australia y muchísimo más ahora en este Foro Mundial de Refugiados, donde Alemania también acaba de anunciar que va a iniciar el proceso de crear su propio Consejo de Personas Refugiadas. De igual manera, vemos con muy buenos ojos para el próximo año precisamente apoyar los esfuerzos de Brasil en conformar su mecanismo de participación significativa para personas refugiadas. En esencia, la misión de ARCID es el reconocimiento inequívoco de que las personas directamente afectadas por el desplazamiento forzado poseen perspectivas únicas. Empoderar a los refugiados en la toma de decisión, especialmente en un papel activo, asesor, en un papel consultivo, mejora las políticas. Además del diálogo continuo que permiten estos mecanismos de participación de personas refugiadas junto a los estados, también se encuentra la práctica de incluir a refugiados expertos, refugiados asesores en eventos internacionales que generan políticas, que generan compromisos sobre el desplazamiento forzado, como lo es el mismo Foro Mundial de Refugiados. Este es otro elemento crucial para ARCID. ¿Por qué? Bueno, pues porque este es un enfoque que caracteriza y garantiza más que nada que las políticas y estrategias elaboradas durante estos eventos reflejen auténticamente las necesidades y perspectivas de aquellos directamente afectados por el desplazamiento forzado. Con la implementación de los consejos consultivos de personas refugiadas, la inclusión de personas refugiadas en estos eventos internacionales, está ocurriendo una profunda transformación a la atención del desplazamiento forzado, en la que estamos muy orgullosos de desempeñar un papel. La participación significativa de los refugiados tiene el poder de profundizar la capacidad del sistema global de refugiados. Y por cierto, estamos totalmente de acuerdo en que, en definitiva, esta no es la respuesta final en materia de todos los retos que enfrentan las personas afectadas por el desplazamiento forzado. Sin embargo, estas dos prácticas son definitivamente un muy buen comienzo para encontrarlas. Thank you.
Many, many thanks. Let me now turn to Jorge Santiago Avila Torres, who is the Executive Director at Jóvenes contra la Violencia in Honduras. Santiago, could you tell us how the participation of forcibly displaced persons has helped improve government policy and integrate youth into society?
Hola. En español, por favor. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad. Quiero decirles que estoy muy feliz iniciar mi participación diciéndoles que inicialmente estaba un poco nervioso, pero la verdad me siento en familia, no siento que me ven como alguien diferente ni nada. Y porque realmente a quien ven aquí, pues simplemente es la cara de miles de jóvenes que se ven representados hoy en mi voz. Miles de jóvenes y familias desplazadas por la violencia internamente en mi país. Y bueno, hablando un poco de cómo la participación en la inclusión de personas refugiadas, en este caso desplazados por la violencia, ha mejorado las políticas públicas. Ya lo decía nuestro representante del gobierno ayer en uno de los eventos. Tenemos al fin una ley de atención y protección para personas desplazadas, que esta ley, después de años de lucha, pues al fin fue aprobada el año pasado. Ojo que es una ley que aún no tiene presupuesto asignado, pero que esta ley nos abre la oportunidad de trabajar mucho más allá de la frontera, porque no hablamos de frontera física, sino que hablamos de fronteras invisibles que están siendo tomadas por crimen organizado, por maras y pandillas, que están llevándose la vida de miles de jóvenes todos los días. Justamente en este momento que yo estoy hablando, hay familias en mi país que están siendo desplazadas
por la violencia, pero también estoy alegre de que hay muchas personas y organizaciones que por medio de esta ley pues tenemos luz verde para seguir trabajando, para proteger y generar nuevas estrategias de protección frente al desplazamiento, pero también al reclutamiento de muchos jóvenes en maras, pandillas y estructuras criminales. La política pública o cualquier normativa legal debería de ser siempre generada desde las bases comunitarias, porque solo aquellas personas que han vivido situaciones difíciles, que han pasado por momentos complicados en su vida, son capaces de proponer mejores y más acertadas soluciones a la problemática que se vive día a día. En mi caso, yo perdí a mi hermano, él fue asesinado por estos grupos de los que estamos hablando y eso me hizo una persona más sensible, pero me di cuenta de que en cada joven con los que nosotros trabajamos, yo veo reflejado el rostro de mi hermano y eso me motiva para seguir trabajando. Pero también me doy cuenta de que en mi país hay líderes comunitarios, hay héroes a quienes debemos seguir fortaleciendo esas capacidades. Aquí tenemos a Juan Carlos, enamorado de Warriors, que para mí es un héroe comunitario y lo que él hace con su organización, bastante bueno, así como muchos otros. Sin ley ya hacíamos mucho. A partir de la ley podemos hacer mucho más, pero esto es una lucha que juntos debemos tomar. Es una corresponsabilidad en la que no nos debemos olvidar de dónde venimos ni hacia dónde vamos y a quiénes estamos representando en este espacio. Hay que saber escuchar a las personas que han vivido situaciones difíciles, pero más allá de escuchar y aprobar una ley, es diseñar realmente estrategias de protección frente a estos problemas que vengan desde las comunidades y que vayan a aportar soluciones realmente efectivas. Y creo que la mejor manera de poder dar un buen camino para una normativa legal en cualquier parte del mundo es primero tomar ese sentido de responsabilidad y que cada quien tome su rol que le corresponde, tomadores de decisión, no sentirse como en un papel vinculante, sino más bien ver que su responsabilidad es ser el garante de los derechos, sociedad civil, que somos esa parte que vincula. Y obviamente todo esto es para la lucha para proteger a todas estas personas que son refugiadas, pero también desplazadas internamente por la violencia, que al final pues son los sujetos de derecho a quienes nos debemos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Let me turn to René Dixon, who is a co-founder at the Forcibly Displaced People Network. We've talked earlier about the importance of diversity in the representation. And so my question is, how do you see meaningful participation that includes people of different ages, genders, sexual orientations, persons with disability, minorities, and other marginalized groups? How do you see this as leading to better outcomes?
Inclusive policymaking is essential in every workplace. And we need to build the system that inclusive and supportive for everyone, not just for a few. Historically, until today, 90% of the drug tests are tested on the males. And females doesn't have this equitable outcome and adequate medical treatment because it's tested on the males. And for women of color, it's even worse. And I believe if you would like to ensure that your mother, your daughter, or spouse has the best medical treatment, they need to be responsive needs. Inclusion, it's not just nice to have, it's must to have. It gives everyone a voice, especially those who were silenced far too long. By ensuring representation from diverse women, from people with disabilities, from LGBTQ community, we tapped into expertise shaped by intersectional lived experience. Most importantly, we need to ensure that diversity is also represented within diversity. I'll give you an example. Forcibly Displaced People Network, a national LGBTQ refugee-led organization. And we created a paid advisory committee, and we unfunded, but we found the money. And the goal was to design first Australia's survey on the settlement outcomes for LGBTQ refugees. And we made sure that we invited diverse LGBTQ community members with different disabilities, with different ages, from different cultures, to be on this advisory committee. And this approach ensured the comprehensive and nuanced sets of questions that enrich our work and outcomes of this research. Employing and involving marginalized communities in decision-making, it's not only more accessible, give you more accessible policies and programs, but it's also empowers communities. It's fostering a sense of agency, belonging, and representation. This is critical for the integration and well-being of refugees. Helping to break down stereotypes, reduce stigma, and promote mutual understanding and respect. To integrate meaningful refugee participation into the policymaking, we should transition to the professional model. This involves allocating resources to refugee-led organizations and appointing refugees to the senior leadership positions. All of this can help us create systems and spaces that is inclusive for everyone and benefit all of us, not just a few.
Many, many thanks, René. And let me now turn to our last panelist, Robert Ochan Leomoy, who is coming from the Dadaab refugee camp in northern Kenya, where he's the director of research at Dadaab Response Association. Refugee participation is obviously central to Dadaab Response Association's work, but also to your research. So can you provide an example from your research of how meaningful refugee participation has helped improve the social inclusion of forcibly displaced persons and stateless persons?
Thank you, moderator, and distinguished participants. Before I move forward, I would like to say that nothing without us, that we are not involved in, is not for us. So this is where we started our game work. I want to give you the overview briefly that the Dadaab Response Association is a refugee-led organization which was formed by the alumni of York University, and the speaker is one of them. Now, in this regard, we find that it was very important for us to see a way forward after graduating from the master's degree in education. What next? We realized that there are a lot of loopholes, big gap about higher education. So we wanted to meet that gap according to the Vision 2030 concerning the refugee education, meeting the 15% by 2030. So we did that. And that is where we started on. Now we took the advantage of trying to dig deep into the community, understand their areas of concern. Do they need to further their studies or what? Yes, of course, that was the area to move. So we moved our recommendation on the action research that we did. We realized that there are very many interests that the community wanted to further their studies. You begin from pre-primary up to secondary, you end up there. Then are you learned? You're only 4 years in secondary school. You are not learned. So we need to push forward. So we did a lot of research activities in collaboration with York University, that is under the Borderless Higher Education for Refugees. We also collaborated with LEARN, that is Local Engagement Refugee Research Network, which is in Carleton University, Canada. We also did the same research activities with the Connected Learning in Crisis Consortium in Purdue University. So all this one, we geared toward accessing the higher education. In this regard, a lot of things change. So what happened now then? Higher education was implemented in Dadaab. Not only that, after the year ended, 2020, 2021, the first batch of the budget got depleted. So we push forward because we need to further the education of the refugees in our area. We dig deep again. Then another organization was coined, African Higher Education in Emergency Network, IN. So far, so good. By next year, God willing, that project will kick off in Dadaab to make sure that the community within Dadaab areas go forward and learn. We did not stop there. When the COVID-19 broke in, it was really a pandemic that all schools were closed. And unfortunately, all teachers were laid off because of the financial constraint. The implementing partner said, we don't have fund. Then they only employed 3 teachers in each school, which was so bad. Now, looking into the protocol of the COVID-19, we went into the school and we did some survey. We got to see this, all classes were packed. And we are told that a meter away per person. What should we do? We ran into the survey, the short survey we did. We connected with local engagement refugee research network. Then we pleaded with, what can we help? The Dadaab community is going to perish. COVID-19 is going to clear the community. Good enough, the director of the LAN stepped in and pushed forward. Within a month, things changed. Everybody, teachers were reinstated in the school, and then the COVID-19 protocol was observed. That is where we move forward. Thank you.
I had promised you some inspirational speakers. I think we've delivered. But let me now go for a second round of questions. And to all panelists, we have in the room a number of people who are making decisions every day on refugee issues as part of their jobs, as part of their functions. And so my question to each of you is, if you had one recommendation to them, just one that they can take home tomorrow evening with them, what would it be? And maybe let me turn to you, Hani, first. On financing, on the ways to best finance refugee-led organizations. What's the one thing that you want the people in this room to go away with?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think before like saying one thing, it's important to understand what are the barriers for resourcing refugee-led organizations, and this time I would like to share that we launched our How to Fund RLOs document, which is a guidelines where you can identify the barriers and also the solutions for it. And I would briefly mention a few points about these barriers. For example, one of the barriers could be high funding floors and perception that RLOs cannot absorb large amount of monies. And maybe a solution for this is to look for collaborative funds or intermediaries that you can trust and channel money through them. Another barrier is that RLOs, there's a reception that RLOs are risky and may result in fraud and other legal liabilities. And I think one important solution for this is to review the due diligence processes that we have in place, and maybe, for example, support RLOs to establish MOUs with partners that you trust and enable to access maybe bank accounts, and to maybe apply standard risk assessments before we say no, we don't, it is too risky. Let's go and do some analysis for the risks and think together with the refugee-led or refugee leaders how we can overcome these risks. The last thing I would like to say is a huge barrier we face is the lack of access to know the refugee leaders themselves. A lot of times we say no without knowing who we are talking about. So I would like to maybe encourage you to seek to attend spaces where refugees and refugee leaders are present at. I think donors should be challenged and challenge themselves to diversify their locations, the compensations for staffing, and also include maybe more refugee staff members, like for example, IKEA is doing. Also, maybe it is very important to build relationships and trust building. I understand that a lot of times there is no trust between decision makers and refugee leaders. I think you decision makers should make a bit of effort to invest in trust building, and we can tell you more how you can do this. And the last thing I would like to say is building rapport and relationships between refugee leaders, refugee-led organizations, and you as decision makers must be trauma informed. You should understand where we come from, what traumas we suffer from, and how we act based on that. And you need to be trauma informed whenever you approach us to speak about decisions that impact our lives directly. Thank you.
Many thanks. Daniela, you spoke earlier about the meaningful integration of displaced persons, meaningful participation of displaced persons. So can you give, once again, one recommendation to decision makers on how to best do that?
Bueno, mi primera recomendación sería que puedan escuchar las 3 recomendaciones que tengo para hoy. Y sería precisamente reconociendo la importancia que tiene lo expresado en el mismo párrafo 34 del Pacto Global de Refugiados, en la cual las respuestas son más eficaces cuando involucran de manera activa y significativa a las personas que pretenden asistir y proteger. Es así que desde ARCID ofrecemos las siguientes 3 recomendaciones. En primer lugar, es esencial pasar de un enfoque ad hoc que tiene la participación significativa de personas refugiadas, ya sea por un evento, ya sea por una situación emergente de refugiados, a que esta pueda ser una colaboración continua, que pueda ser una colaboración entre autoridades y las mismas personas refugiadas expertas. Esto implicaría establecer un marco en el que las personas refugiadas puedan poder compartir sus posturas junto a las autoridades de una manera constante, de una manera organizada en los momentos de toma de decisiones. El cambio a este enfoque no solo mejoraría la calidad de las políticas y programas, sino que también garantizaría una comprensión más completa de los desafíos enfrentados por las personas desplazadas, apátridas y para también todos los actores involucrados. La segunda sería imperativo incluir a las personas refugiadas no solo basándose en el hecho de que sean refugiadas, no solo basándose en el hecho de que hayan sido afectados por el desplazamiento forzado, sino reconocer y valorar toda su trayectoria laboral, toda su experiencia profesional y, por qué no, también su preparación académica. Esto implicaría elevar a los refugiados como expertos por derecho propio y así superar sus narrativas personales que en algunos casos llegan a ser sensacionalistas. Al aprovechar la riqueza de las experiencias de las comunidades de refugiados, los tomadores de decisiones pueden beneficiarse de un enfoque más holístico e informado para el desarrollo e implementación de políticas. Finalmente, los estados pueden considerar específicamente establecer mecanismos de participación significativa, como son los consejos de personas refugiadas, pues su naturaleza colaborativa se asegura de que los objetivos establecidos no solo sean relevantes para el contexto, para el momento, sino también reflejen las experiencias matizadas y también las necesidades que se ven las personas directamente afectadas. Esta es la manera de traducir los compromisos que hay para la participación significativa de las personas refugiadas desde una teoría y convertirla en una realidad, en la práctica. Gracias.
Many thanks. Santiago, can I ask you the same question?
Ok, primero, quitarme esto. Saludar a los chicos y chicas de Jóvenes contra la Violencia que me están viendo a través de nuestras redes sociales. Bueno, creo que hay varios errores que se están cometiendo. Pero creo que primero para poder transformar los problemas locales, para luego hacer procesos de sensibilización en general, ¿verdad? Sensibilización no solamente hacia las personas para reconocer e identificar y luego actuar en base a los problemas, sino también sensibilizar, nos toca mucho sensibilizar y explicar muchas veces a tomadores de decisión que no tienen idea del problema, pero que en la medida que vamos avanzando, pues hemos logrado consolidar ciertos grupos de tomadores de decisión sensibles, ¿verdad? Que a partir de ahí comienza un nuevo paso, ¿verdad? Al momento en que los tomadores de decisión se empiezan a sensibilizar, a reconocer el problema, a partir de ahí se puede empezar a actuar. Creo que un gravísimo error que se está cometiendo es empezar a politizar o ponerle un color o un nombre a la acción, ¿verdad? Creo que es más importante reconocer que la lucha social es justo eso, ¿verdad? Una lucha social que viene desde la problemática, pero cuando ya le ponemos un nombre o un apellido a un logro, ese es el primer error. Cuando sabemos la importancia o de dónde viene la problemática, es mucho más fácil poder considerar el talento local. Por ejemplo, vaya, mi organización y yo ganamos también el Lance regional hace 2 años y eso ha hecho eco más internacional que nacionalmente. Pero no es tan importante para nosotros porque en la comunidad sí nos reconocen y somos referentes en las comunidades, porque justo eso es lo que estamos creando, estas redes de protección comunitaria. La otra cosa es que en la medida en que querramos tomar individualmente protagonismos, empezamos a fallar, ¿verdad? Esto es reconocer de que necesitamos del otro. Aquí no hay colores políticos, no hay religión, no hay estatus social. La violencia no discrimina. ¿Por qué hacerlo nosotros? Entonces aquí, en la medida que cada quien tome su rol, vamos a poder brindar mejores soluciones. El desplazamiento también está de manera no física, ¿verdad? Desplazar a las personas también es excluirlas por ser jóvenes, por pensar que no tienen ideas diferentes o ideas innovadoras que puedan solucionar los problemas. Desplazar también es no reconocer el talento de las personas por ser justamente refugiados o desplazados o por su lugar de residencia. Y en la medida que nosotros vayamos cambiando esta manera de pensar, no solamente a nivel de las comunidades, a nivel de sociedad civil, sino que también a nivel de los tomadores de decisión, a partir de ahí comienza un cambio. Y en este caso, para nosotros y mi organización, siempre estamos abiertos a proponer. Más allá de llevar una protesta, es una crítica constructiva y decir, ya hemos hecho mucho sin una ley y sin el apoyo de X o Y institución. Con ustedes, si ustedes se suben a este barco, podemos llegar mucho más allá y tener programas mucho más efectivos. Y lo más importante, y que sí me gustaría reconocerlo, que justamente por eso es que aceptamos al ACNUR como socio, porque en este caso nosotros los aceptamos, no ellos a nosotros, es porque nos dejaron proponer, no decirnos, aquí está esta línea de acción, ejecuten, porque si no ejecutan ustedes, alguien más lo va a hacer, sino al contrario. Nos dijeron, consideramos y reconocemos lo que ustedes están haciendo y justamente por eso vamos a apoyarnos mutuamente. Y a eso es lo que les quiero invitar, ¿verdad? De que a medida que nos apoyemos mutuamente y que vayamos forjando ese tejido social y vayamos fortaleciendo nuestras redes de acción, las soluciones van a ser mucho más efectivas. Muchas gracias.
René, you spoke earlier very eloquently about the importance of diversity in refugee participation. So can you tell us about your recommendation to achieve such diversity in refugee participation?
We need to understand that marginalized group existing only because of existing discrimination systems. that was created based on approach one size fits all, and it doesn't work. We need to work with these discriminatory systems in our workplaces. And let me highlight a few considerations. Fair payments. People are affected already by discrimination and they're already surviving. We must stop asking marginalized communities to help you to advise your paid job on cost of our free labor. It should be paid. A lot of, yeah. Actual accessibility. Disability is still a taboo topic in many cultures, and accessibility requires comprehensive measures addressing the needs of different people with different various disabilities, like physical, psychological, and intellectual. Additionally, accessibility is not only about ensuring sustainable meeting places that are safe, but it's time, duration of the meeting, ability to join remotely, as well as ensuring that spaces are safe for women, for LGBTQ communities, and they're trauma-informed. Accessibility needs to be viewed beyond all of these terms as well. This includes identifying and removing barriers for finding participations. If you don't have any LGBTQ, people with disabilities, or related organizations to age and diversity, and you didn't grant them money, that means that your system doesn't work. Review it and make sure that you removing these barriers that they can participate and they can get further help to their communities. And diversity within diversity, again, you can't have one lesbian on your board or a group or advisory committee and say that you have representation. No, it doesn't cut. Transgender women will have completely different needs because they're dying and they're killed in disproportionately higher rates. And also include age, gender, and diversity meaningfully in your pledges. Please, let's have benefit that will be measurable and will benefit all of our groups. Thank you.
Let me finally turn to Robert to hear from you your recommendation to both decision makers, but also to researchers on how to best include refugees in the research that affects them.
Thank you, moderator. To summarize, I think we are here because of the meaningful participation. So this is where I'm also giving you a takeaway. You go and meditate on it and think along, try to make it practical. Well, it is true that we always conduct research activities, and a lot of researches have already been conducted, but very little has been implemented. And this is what I want you to do. Can you go and think along how you begin to implement what we have already found out? Why should we put it, and you put it in writing, you hang them in the shelves, put them in the computers, store them in the devices without implementation? I need you to do that. Well, for that, I also say we are looking into, for example, when we are finding, we need you to see deep into what are the benefits of this information we have already found out, so that we take the accountability. We should account for the people, the community, we are getting the information from them, because those are the problems they are having. So how can we address it? If you store the information, are you solving the problem? The work of the research activities is making it action. So let us take it. Two, I'm also trying to figure out that if possible, when you are there, don't think of you coming up to my home and then you find the information. I already have the information. The community around me are me. So in my position, I know much and I'll dig deeper than you, because when you come to me, the community may fear giving you the better information, but I'll be there, be with the community, then I'll tell them, this is how we need it to be. Can you give us your input? Tell us exactly what the detail of your problem. So deal with the local community, local researchers, so that you dig deep into the information and you take the action. Can we begin to do that one? or we still think of will. So will not change it. Let us say now we are moving forward. Now again, I'm also just urging you what you need to think along is the way you trust the international organizations with money. Think that these refugees are also human beings who are driving the organizations, and they are not running anywhere. Even if they run, we are still in the same universe. Where will we go? Give them money. Thank you.
Many thanks. Let me maybe just make a few observations in closing. First, Hani very helpfully mentioned a brochure or handbook on how to finance ILOs. So for those who are interested, and I suspect many of you are, let me indicate that you can find it on the website at refugeeslead.org. That should be easy to remember, refugeeslead.org. And for those of you who prefer paper copies, I understand he has some. But let me also go back to one of the points that Gillian was making in her introduction, which is that we probably all agree on the principle of meaningful refugee participation. The question is how to translate the principle into practicalities, into action. And I guess if we compare what we see today with what we saw for those of us who were at the 2019 Global Refugee Forum, it's very clear that much has happened. Much has happened in terms of the numbers, but also in terms of the quality of the participation of refugees. What I mean is their actual integration in a number of bilateral delegations, their actual participations in a number of events. Yet, as we all know, much remains to be done. And then I was listening to the panelists, several words, I guess 5 words really struck me. The first one is humility. Let's be humble about what we know or what we believe we know. As Robert said, well, there may be limitations to what we actually know. So let's try to approach these issues with a lot of humility and therefore recognize that consulting, engaging with refugees is not only the right thing to do, but it's actually the smart thing to do. I think a second word that came in many of the interventions was trust. And trust is something that requires a little bit of risk-taking, but it needs to go beyond that. We also heard about trauma and the importance of understanding who we are in front of us and where people are starting from. We heard the word diversity, which I think all of us should probably emphasize. But the last point is what I would call the urgency of now, which is, all this is nice, but as Robert was saying, let's stop using the future tense and let's start using the present tense. So let me close with one observation. There is one takeaway for me from this forum, which is a remark that a colleague made in a private dinner earlier yesterday, actually. And he was quoting a saying in his country, which apparently goes as follows: if you do something for me, but you do this without me, then you do it against me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Xavier, and the panelists for a very inspiring panel. Thank you very much. I'll call now for the statements of support straight away.
No, got it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Reem Alabali Radovan, and I'm the German State Minister for Migration, Integration, and Asylum. Thank you so much for your inspiring and enthusiastic statements on the participation of refugees and refugee organizations in the international field. You're speaking from my heart and addressed really key issues. For me, as a former refugee myself, it is important to, and as a political leader now, it is important to acknowledge, as you said, refugees, not only as refugees, but refugees as humans who bring strength, resilience, and experience, and they have a lot to bring to the table. And refugees all have dreams and aspirations. And that's why it is for me in my work, it is important to not only hear refugees, but also to bring them to the table and speak to them for planning out on political projects. That's why I have a regular, for as an example, what political leaders can do. I have a regular high-level exchange format with a number of the umbrella refugee and migrant organizations in Germany, and we plan together on political projects, and they bring in their voice, and I can take it with me and bring it into the law. This enables us to include the needs and viewpoints of people with a migrant and refugee background into all federal government policies. And also, I am very glad, and for me, it's a historical moment today that we also have brought Mr. Kava Spartak to the Global Refugee Forum. He is the representation for all migrant and refugee organizations from Germany, and he's from the Afghan Umbrella Organization. And we are very proud that he was elected transparently and democratically by all organizations in Germany to this high-level dialogue. And I think that is very great, and we hope to continue this process with an advisory board to ensure representation at all future formats. So I would like to thank all of those committed to meaningful refugee participation for their valuable initiative. Let's all ensure that migrants and especially refugees are given a voice. Let it be their own voice. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Juan Ángel de Gouveia. I am the president of the Latin American Network of Organization of Persons with Disabilities and Their Families, RIADIS, and board member of the International Disability Alliance. The International Disability Alliance, IDA, representing over 1,100 organizations of persons with disabilities worldwide, wishes to express our support and commitment to advance meaningful participation for forcibly displaced and stateless persons, in particular those with different age, gender, diversity, including disability, in all policies and decisions that concerns them. According to the views shared during consultations held within the last few years by IDA, lack of means and opportunities of meaningful participation has been identified, and one of the top priorities for forcibly displaced and stateless persons with disabilities. As a response to this clear demand, IDA is sharing its pledge for the second Global Refugee Forum as follows. IDA will prioritize facilitating and advancing participation of forcibly displaced persons with disabilities, in particular, those with intersecting identities. This will shape two folds. First, engaging and supporting refugee-led organizations to enhance inclusion and participation of forcibly displaced persons with disabilities in their membership, agenda, and consultations. Second, support shaping and strengthening a global network of forcibly displaced and stateless persons with disabilities. The International Disability Alliance urged all stakeholders pledging to advance participation of forcibly displaced and stateless people to ensure that their measures are inclusive and accessible for those with disabilities. included by provision of information in accessible formats, raising awareness among refugee lead organizations regarding potential and requirements of forcibly displaced people with disabilities, and allocated dedicated opportunities and support for forcibly displaced and stateless persons with disabilities to access and participation and representation opportunities and platforms. I just want to take the lead in this moment. Yeah, I'm a deaf person, and I was talking in sign language. We are talking about here about accessibility and information accessibility. I'm talking about barriers. I just raising the voice about the accessibility for people with disabilities, for deaf people, for blind people, and real inclusion for us, for people with disabilities and migrant with disabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Monica Malith, a student at the University of Nairobi, Faculty of Law, a Duffy Scholar, and the President of the Student Council at the University of Nairobi, making it as the first international student to hold such a position since the inception of that university. Today, as we stand amidst the largest generation of young people in history, with 1.9 billion individuals aged between 10 and 29 years crafting their future, remarkably, 90% reside global south. The aspirations of young people are clear. They seek access to quality education and livelihood opportunities and yearn for a voice in policy making and discussions and decision-making processes. These aspirations were echoed in the Global Youth Consultation meetings with the We Believe in Youth initiative, leading up to the high-level of official meetings in 2021. In preparation for this year's Global Refugee Forum, young leaders spearheaded convenings in 5 countries, actively engaging policymakers, the private sector, academia, and civil society in dialogue on the critical issues. These discussions culminated in a youth manifesto urging stakeholders at the Global Refugee Forum to integrate young voices into the pledge-making processes. During the Global Refugee Forum linked events, Youth Leadership in Action, the future we cannot afford to ignore, held on December 12th, several key points were emphasized. Young people are eager to engage in policy dialogues and offer collaborative partnerships to develop solutions at all levels. There is an escalating emphasis on the global youth agenda, with an increasing number of actors enhancing their focus on working with and for the young people. We were inspired by the commitments to youth investment, inclusion, and participation shared by the newly appointed UN Assistant Secretary General on Youth Affairs, the Ambassador of Denmark, the UNFPA Deputy Director of the Humanitarian Response Division, the incoming UNHCR Assistant High Commissioner, and the many other compact partners, especially as we look towards the summit of the future. We encourage you to follow and support the multi-stakeholders youth pledge by the Compact for Young People in humanitarian action. This pledge is crucial step in advancing the meaningful and effective participation of young refugees, especially at the local level, to shape a more inclusive and resilient world. Thank you so much, Ambassador Malik.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I'm here as with Terra des Hommes as a part of the delegation of the Initiative for Child Rights in the Global Compacts. It's important to listen to child refugees like me and the children that spoke at the consultations led by the initiative. Children are different from adults and have different needs, but we all have problems that need solving. Uh, in the consultations, identified needs like being listened to and engaged, staying with their families and communities, accessing MHPSS and other key services, and having education. Moreover, in the Children's Manifesto, children want answers to questions like, I dream of a better future. Will you help me? And why don't you pay attention to children's needs and voices? We're not just asking to be heard, but to be a part of change because sometimes we can see things adults don't. Refugee children like me have a voice, opinions, and rights just like adults. Our voices matter, and we want governments to hear us. We face difficult moments, sometimes danger in our lives, like me when I left Ukraine due to war. We just want to be safe, happy, heard, and included because it's our right to live in peace. How community groups where refugee children share experience and support each other are one way. Um, we need more of this. Groups from different communities and countries could be supported to meet, to exchange, and find solutions. For this, the Initiative for Child Rights is making a pledge to create a group where child refugees can share ideas with each other and with leaders about helping refugee children. This kind of children's network would ensure that leaders hear refugee children and make progress so that participation is both meaningful and consequential, not only during the GRF, but also beyond. Thank you.
I would like to thank all the speakers for their statement of support. It's worth mentioning here that this event is co-organized with the advisory board of organizations led by displaced and stateless people. What we heard within the last 90 minutes, we heard about participation, how important that participation to be meaningful and diverse. We heard about the role of states, the role of UNHCR, the role of private sector, and the role of RLOs themselves, working at the local levels with refugees themselves. We heard about refugee leadership, women refugee leadership, but some of the statements that I heard today, they were like so inspiring. One of them was refugees being agents of change. And the second one that affected me is also inclusion is not only nice to have, it is a must to have. The importance of also funding refugee-led organizations is at the core of the work that we are doing as refugee leaders. All this reflects the motto and the what refugee leaders are saying. They say nothing about us without us. Before ending this session, we have an announcement to make, and therefore I would like to invite my colleague from RC, Tres Gardi, to join me here on the stage. I'll just give a bit of background. Yeah. During the 2021 high-level official meeting, a dedicated side event was held on refugee participation. At this event, the Assistant High Commissioner for Protection, Ms. Gillian Triggs, called upon international community, including refugee leaders themselves, to form a multi-stakeholder coalition of champions to promote meaningful refugee participation in the lead up to the GRF 2023, as per today. Following this meeting, there has been a collective effort on the part of the Global Refugee-led Network and our seat in coordination with UNHCR and several other states to establish this coalition. The aim of the coalition is to create a space where diverse stakeholders can come together to exchange information, provide support to one another, and conduct joint advocacy that advances the meaningful participation of refugees in policies and programming. More specifically, the coalition would focus on the meaningful refugee participation at the local, national, and international levels. I would pass the mic to my colleague Rez to officially launch the coalition.
Thank you very much, Amir. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to announce the official launch of the Multi-Stakeholder Coalition for Meaningful Refugee Participation. And it seems very fitting to make this announcement at the second Global Refugee Forum, and in particular at this side event on meaningful refugee participation. Since the first GRF, both discussions around meaningful refugee participation and its implementation have grown significantly across sectors. And to make gains on these commitments, as it was suggested by Gillian Triggs at the high-level official meeting in 2021, we are launching the Multi-Stakeholder Coalition for Meaningful Refugee Participation. We are delighted today to see this idea come to fruition. Our seat and GRN have signed on as interim co-chairs to begin the process for this coalition and get it up and running. And we are very excited and grateful to welcome both Australia and the Netherlands as our co-chairing state partners. We all look forward to better coordination, maximizing our impact as a collective. Thank you very much, and we invite anyone who is interested to join this multi-stakeholder coalition on meaningful refugee participation. Thank you.
Okay, we have another statement of, we don't have. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for participating. I believe that this was a very inspiring and important side event. I would like to thank you all. Yes, Hani?
Just one thing before we leave. I believe that we need to advocate for the next GRF to be in Africa, maybe, not in Switzerland. Let's go to Uganda, all of us, or Kenya, or Egypt, not to Switzerland anymore.
Thank you very much, Hani. And I officially now announce the session finished. Thank you very much.